Okay, guys, so this is a interesting video that I'm about to make, or live I'm about to do, which is called Fact Checking the Fact Checkers. So, as we all know, Facebook fact checks us continually. They decide whether or not what we're saying is true or not, and very often they'll ban you if you say something that they determine as not true. And normally it's quite hard to fact check the fact checkers because the argument is often about sources. So they use sources that they claim to be the legitimate sources, and typically their sources are going to disagree with the sources that you are using, and their sources from their point of view trump yours, and therefore they're right, and you can't argue. And they don't give you an opportunity to argue when they ban you for a month because you said something that conflicts with their sources. You're just banned. Now, why this is interesting is because I'm going to fact check them with their own sources. So every now and again, they even disagree with their own sources. So first of all, let me just share my page. Okay, so this was the statement that I made, which was fact checked. Okay, and basically I said the CDC conducted the Tuskegee experiment from 32 to 72. Tuskegee, oh my goodness, I can't even say it. Tuskegee experiment isn't a conspiracy theory. Okay, so they fact checked it here, missing content, and then let's have a see why. What do they say? They say, fact check, the CDC didn't oversee the Tuskegee study, but the agency isn't blameless, experts say. Well, it's nice to see that Facebook are admitting that the CDC are not blameless. Another way of putting that would be totally corrupt. But the point is here, the primary claim here is that the CDC didn't oversee the Tuskegee study. What they're implying here, I don't know necessarily exactly what they mean by oversee, but they're trying to break the link between the CDC's involvement in the Tuskegee study as if they didn't have a link. And they say the same information was checked in another place by fact checkers, independent fact checkers, yeah, independent, say this information is missing context and could mislead people. Okay, so that is their claim. Okay, now there is a little bit of this that could be argued in this statement. It would be better if it said the CDC conducted the Tuskegee experiment, which ran from 1932 to 72. Would have been better wording because the CDC wasn't involved at the beginning. Anyway, that's not what they're arguing about, so I'm gonna leave that and not go too much into that. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to share another page, but this time I'm going to share from one of their own sources, which is in this case it's Wikipedia. Okay, so Wikipedia is not a source that I trust or rely on, but it's one that Facebook generally does trust and rely on, and uses information from them among other sources to prove whatever their position is. Okay, so we're going to go to that right now. So here's Wikipedia's entry on the Tuskegee syphilis study. I want to point to the highlighted bit because let's read that whole line. It says, so the Tuskegee study of untreated syphilis in the Negro male, okay, informally referred to as the Tuskegee experiment or Tuskegee syphilis study, was an ethically abusive study. I'm glad they admit that. Conducted between 1932 and 1972 by the United States Public Health Service, PHS, and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC. Okay, so here we have very, very clearly, okay, in Wikipedia that they trust, that they rely on, the very clear claim that it was a study by two organizations, the PHS and the CDC. Actually, to be specifically accurate, it was started by the PHS and then it was taken over by the CDC later, because the CDC didn't actually exist in 1932, so it took over later. This study was run for, you can see, a very extensive period of time. Okay, and it was extremely unethical because they basically pretended to be treating people, trying to help them with their health while they were not treating them, and watching to see what would happen to those people. I've just realised that I didn't show it. I'm going to show it now. I do apologise for that. So I'm now showing what I was just reading. I thought it was on the screen. It wasn't. So that is the Wikipedia Tuskegee syphilis study entry right there. Everything that I just read comes from there. You can see that, pause it, read the whole thing. Or of course you can just go to Google and Google Tuskegee syphilis study Wikipedia, and you'll be able to see that for yourself. Okay, so the fact checkers are proven wrong using their own sources. Of course, if I'd proven this wrong from a source they don't accept, they would have just denied it, because they would reject all sources that don't come under their little umbrella. But this is one of their own sources that they go to. It's a go-to of the left, and they are wrong. CDC were involved in the Tuskegee experiments. Tuskegee experiments were an absolute abuse that resulted in death. You can read even in the Wikipedia, which plays it down a little bit. You can read about people dying as a result of not being treated while they pretended they were treating them, of innocent women getting syphilis from the men because they weren't treated, of children getting syphilis, and people suffering and dying while the CDC was pretending to be helping them, but actually killing them. That is what went on, okay? And that is undefensible, or indefensible, let me use the correct, indefensible, and that was government mandated, government, because the CDC, the government was involved as well. In fact, Bill Clinton did apologize for it in, when did he apologize? 1997, he apologized. Has anything changed? I don't think so. We have experiments going on right now. We have an experimental thing going on right this minute. Okay, so there you go. Fact checkers fact checked and found to be wrong.